I'm Carrie Peters. I'd love to talk to you today on how you can engage NewView for a current state assessment. If you've never had a business process assessment done before, let's talk a little bit about that and what that is first. When you're thinking about your current business processes, you may often be frustrated or confused or just wonder how to do things differently. A business process assessment takes a look at your current business processes, how you use your ERP software for those processes, the setup of that software behind the scenes, and ultimately, we're always looking for how could you be using your ERP system in a better way. We're really going to focus in on efficiency and automation and how you can use things that you're not using today to make things better at your company. Oftentimes, we don't know if we're ready to have a business process assessment or when the right time is to have a business process assessment. I think that the biggest indicator is just that feeling in your gut where you just know there has to be a better way, or you wonder how other companies do it. You try to figure things out, maybe search some things on the web, look at YouTube videos, and you see people doing things in a better way, but you're just not quite sure how to make the leap to that better way for yourself and for people at your company. If you don't have that gut feeling, you might be seeing other indicators, things like higher number of errors, things taking a much longer time than they should because of errors or omissions in reporting, or simply people just hesitating because they're not quite sure or confident that they're doing the right thing. So they're taking extra time or doing more double checking than normal to make sure that things are done correctly. Doing more things than necessary outside of the system as a double check is also an indication that things in your system might not be working correctly, or you just may not be using the correct processes to maximize the use of your system. What happens with an assessment? What is it that we do that can help you with this process? There are really a few things that we're going to focus in on. The first one is talking, just visiting with you and your team. We do this either on-site or remotely. It really depends on your preference for that and maybe your company culture. We will sit down with you and your key team members to talk about the pain points that you're experiencing, and we'll have lots of questions for you about the processes that you have today, what is and isn't working, and things that you'd like to accomplish in the future that you're not able to do today. We'll always have a set agenda that we agree on before the assessment begins so that you know what to expect, which topics will be covered when, and who will be invited to each session. We will follow the agenda as we go through the week to talk with those team members and get through each of those topics to make sure everything gets covered. During the week, we will likely discover some things that we would like to observe. Sometimes being able to look over somebody's shoulder, whether we're there in person or whether we're doing it through a remote session on their computer, will give us some insight as to what people's level of confidence is, or where they may be missing something that's hard for them to explain, but easy for us to see. We're also going to ask for access to your system so we can look behind the scenes and take a look at the settings that have been chosen for your system to understand the volume of transactions that are created, to give us an idea of the scale in each of your business areas and how many documents are being produced in which period of time. I've included here a sample assessment schedule for something that I did just within the last month with a new company. You can just see an example. This is a pretty small one that we did, and we had a large focus on finance with this particular group. You'll see that there are a few sessions that are ad hoc training that we included, some things that we knew that they needed just a little bit of help as a group to be able to spend some time on that with the senior consultant who did this engagement, and then also a coaching session with the controller, in addition to all of these other sessions that allowed us to create their recommendations report. It generally takes anywhere from 2 to 3 days to a week to conclude all of these sessions, depending on the complexity of your visit. And we do try to keep things compact like we have with this week so that we can get through things and get to that recommendations report quickly. If you do a remote session, you can spread this out over a little bit more time if that works better for your company, but we do try to get through this relatively quickly so that we can capture all of those recommendations at the same time and look at the big picture of how things are working for your company. If your company is more complex, or if we're looking at things with a different level where we're including things like warehousing and manufacturing and not just finance, we'll obviously need more time than what we have in this simple example. We often get the question of how much time your team needs to participate. One thing with a business process assessment that's particularly effective is having somebody who is a champion of the business process improvement initiative. So having that one person attend as many sessions as possible allows you to have some good continuity of someone who's reviewing those recommendations at the end. And we often find that someone from IT at the director level, or maybe the controller in the finance level, both of those teams really benefit from hearing the pain points from all of these other departments as far as what's happening and what people would like to do instead. So the exercise is useful not just for us to gather that information, but immediately for your team to get some feedback at a very deep level about what is and is not working. So if you have those folks who are the champions of the business process improvement initiative, they will probably spend their entire week absorbed in this process. We do have appropriate size breaks to allow people to have a quick meeting, return some emails, make a phone call, that kind of thing, but it is pretty intense work. Depending on the agenda and other people's responsibilities, you may have some of your team only visit with us for a few hours, depending on what their area of expertise is when you think of the different topics that are covered. Our goal at the end of this week is to make sure that we've gotten through all of the material, that we've been able to be flexible and change as we discover things that need to be addressed that maybe we hadn't identified before we got there, and to have a discussion of a draft of the recommendations report before we leave. That way you are getting the document that you're looking for very quickly. There may be a few revisions that need to happen there based on discussions of priority that we have at the end, but you'll have the substantial amount of work before we even leave your site or before we finish the schedule. So what is it that you get out of all of this work, out of the preparation and the agenda setting and the visit? What is the thing that's going to be given to you as a result of this? We're going to provide a detailed recommendations report. And this includes by issue each one of our recommendations for improvement. In general, after doing this for over 5 years now, we find that most of our customers have well over 100 recommendations that they can act on as a result of our assessment visit. So what kind of things are you going to learn on that recommendations report? We're always going to break down that report in 4 categories. We want you to be able to know things that you can do yourself, things that you could do right now without any outside help, without any training, without anybody coaching, things that you can do that are small, simple things that would be easy for you to enact right away. We often have people do this the same day while we're visiting. Based off of the conversations that we've had, they learned something that they could do, and we can provide that in a small amount of time and just say, hey, if you did this thing instead of this, that would make that so much easier. And they say, oh yes, I could do that right away. And they do. Those kind of things we'll still document in that recommendations report because not everybody remembers all of those things, and we want to make sure that information is passed on to everybody else. But there are often quite a few simple things you could do right away that we're just going to give you a little prompt for so that you remember to put that into action. The second thing we'll do is identify where training is needed. Sometimes as a result of a recommendations, some additional training. It might be recommendations for people to attend some of our on-demand Learn Dynamics courses, or it might be some custom training that could be put together for your group as a whole, Or it might even be some type of one-on-one coaching if you have just a few team members who need some help understanding some key concepts where we need a little bit of a deeper dive. So there are always recommendations for training that could help your team get a little bit farther with a little bit more knowledge from an expert. There will be some things that are more complex that we're not able to gather enough information on during the short time that we're covering a whole lot of things. And as we identify these particular issues that require a deeper dive, we'll document that with the recommendations report with the goal of reaching an understanding of the problem so that a solution can be created to solve it. And the last thing is that if there is anything where you may need to work with your Microsoft partner for some type of a customized programming solution or maybe use of an add-on software solution, we're going to include that in the report as well, because we want you to continue to work with your Microsoft partner for your licensing and for customized programming and for add-on software. Now, I don't normally share a sample of my recommendations report because we do have a pretty strict NDA with all of our customers, but I have cleaned this one up and made it very general and simple so I can show you a few examples of some of the things that we provide. This particular table of contents for this report comes from the visit that I showed you in the agenda. So you can see how this is structured and how each of these are addressed in here. And you'll probably notice that the topics follow the session agenda quite closely. Every one of these sections gets detailed information about what the issue is and what the recommendation is to fix it. You'll notice that these are brief. This is not a functional requirements document where we're documenting exactly what the process is today and identifying gaps or creating solutions in the report here. This is intended to be quick, surgical. It's going to give you an idea of what needs to happen to resolve the issue that has been identified. This allows you to review and categorize and prioritizing according to those different categories, the issues that you want to address in your future work plan as you address the issues according to their priorities with your company. So this is a question we should all be asking. What's the return on investment that we're getting with this whole process? I always say that this assessment process provides immediate return. And you might think that that's a little boastful or silly, but I will tell you that the goal of our entire team is to get that one comment of that one tip paid for this whole trip. And we always get that comment at least once in the first 2 days. With this most recent trip, I had 3 separate people make that comment in their sessions within the first 2 days. And that always makes me feel great. And of course, it should make you feel great because that means that you are getting valuable information right away that you can use immediately, in addition to all of the other things that are going to help you with your future plan for business process improvement at your company. What happens after the assessment and after the recommendations report has been delivered? Once you've had a chance to review the report and discuss your priorities and what your real timeline is, as well as your budget, we're going to create a plan of action to address the issues identified. And all of these factors, the priorities, how long you want to spend on this, how much money you have to address this type of project, are all a factor as we figure out what needs to be addressed. Which are the urgent things that need to happen right away? What are the nice to haves? How can we address the whole list over time and instill a value of continual process improvement in your organization? And of course, I would expect you to ask, what's the cost? We keep our pricing for business process assessments very simple. They're always a flat fee. We do offer them at 2 different levels. If we're looking at only finance, then we're looking at a flat fee of $10,000. If we're layering in warehousing and manufacturing, that gives us a little bit more time to do our work with $15,000. And if you have some known complex issues that you want to include, we may also increase the amount to allow for additional time. So that's all something that we can discuss when we talk about your particular situation, but you know what you're receiving, when you're receiving it, and how much up front before you even get started. If you're ready to get going with your business process assessment, it's very simple. You can set up a time to meet with us, and we're going to send a contract, NDA, and an invoice. Start thinking about the dates that you want at this point, because once the signed documents and payment are received from you, your visit dates are going to be guaranteed. We do currently need about 60 days to schedule, and we do have sometimes open up as things change, so we do keep a waiting list if you're wanting to get in earlier than that. Once that signed document and payment has been received, we're going to create that visit agenda. We'll send calendar invites to reserve time on everyone's calendar so that they know what's happening and when, and then we'll have our visit. I would love to talk with you about a future business process assessment for your company. If you're ready to move now, or if you're just doing a little window shopping and you want to talk a little bit more about what that would look like sometime in the future, anytime is a great time to start that discussion. You can always use the link here to schedule a call with me, and I look forward to discussing your business process assessment.